In Pennsylvania's industrial heart, where steel once forged America's backbone, some mysteries remain buried in the ruins. At 6:23 a.m. on October 14, 2019, security guard Frank Novak made his routine morning patrol through the Bethlehem Steel Works, Heritage District in Pennsylvania. The autumn air carried the metallic scent that still lingered in the massive industrial complex 24 years after the last furnace went cold. Frank's footsteps echoed through the cathedral-like spaces between towering blast furnaces, their rust-stained steel rising nearly 300 feet into the gray dawn sky. Dr. Catherine Kowalczyk was supposed to be finishing her overnight inventory in Blast Furnace C. The 43-year-old industrial historian had been granted special after-hours access to catalog artifacts for the Smithsonian's upcoming exhibition on American steel production. Frank expected to find her in the museum section, methodically photographing equipment and updating her meticulous records. Instead, he found only her clipboard. It lay on a metal grating beside the furnace's casting floor, its pages fluttering in the wind that perpetually moved through the complex's steel skeleton. Frank picked up the clipboard and immediately noticed something troubling. The inventory list contained serial numbers and equipment descriptions he'd never seen before, despite working security at the heritage site for 6 years. Items like Blast Furnace C Safety Protocol Manual, Reverend 1979, and Worker Incident Log, Casting Floor Station 7 were cataloged in Dr. Kowalczyk's precise handwriting. These weren't part of the official museum collection. The Bethlehem Steel Works had once been the beating heart of American industry. From 1857 to 1995, the massive complex along the Lehigh River forged the steel that built the Golden Gate Bridge, the Empire State Building, and dozens of Navy warships. At its peak, the plant employed over 30,000 workers and produced 8 million tons of steel annually. The shutdown devastated the community, leaving behind a sprawling industrial graveyard that stretched across 1,800 acres. By 2007, the Steel Stacks Heritage Foundation had transformed portions of the site into a cultural destination. The preserved blast furnaces became monuments to industrial achievement, illuminated at night in brilliant colors. A casino and performing arts center brought new economic life to the area. But vast sections of the complex remained untouched, too dangerous or costly to renovate, accessible only to researchers like Dr. Kowalczyk. Frank radioed the main security office immediately. Within an hour, Northampton County Sheriff deputies arrived, followed by Dr. Kowalczyk's colleagues from the Industrial Heritage Foundation. Her silver Honda Civic sat in the employee parking area where she'd left it at 11:30 the previous evening. Her purse remained locked inside, along with her jacket and a thermos of coffee, still half full. Dr. Kowalczyk was known throughout the preservation community as meticulous and safety-conscious. She never worked alone without proper safety equipment and communication protocols. Her digital camera, usually attached to her belt, was missing. Her cell phone showed her last text message, sent to her research assistant at 11:47 p.m. "We'll call tomorrow to discuss." None. As investigators began their preliminary search of Blast Furnace C, the massive structure seemed to swallow their voices. The furnace interior stretched upward like a steel cathedral, with multiple levels connected by narrow catwalks and rusted stairways. Decades of accumulated debris created shadows where anything could be hidden. The complex's sheer scale became apparent. Blast Furnace C alone contained enough interior space to hold a 15-story building. But it was the clipboard that troubled Frank most. In 6 years of security work, he'd escorted dozens of researchers through the heritage site. He knew every artifact in the official collection, every piece of equipment on display. The items listed on Dr. Kowalczyk's inventory sheets simply didn't exist, at least not according to any records he'd ever seen. Where was Dr. Catherine Kowalczyk? And what had she discovered in the depths of America's abandoned steel cathedral? Dr. Catherine Kowalczyk's connection to Bethlehem Steel ran deeper than professional interest. Her grandfather, Stanley Kowalczyk, had worked as a blast furnace foreman for 40 years, from 1955 until the plant's closure. Family photographs showed him in hard hat and work clothes, standing proudly beside the very furnaces Catherine now studied as historical artifacts. She grew up hearing stories about the steel works, recalled her research assistant, Maria Santos, during interviews with investigators. Her grandfather would tell her about the heat, the noise, the brotherhood among the workers. But he also talked about things that never made it into the company newsletters: accidents that were covered up, safety violations that were ignored when production quotas were tight. Catherine earned her doctorate in industrial history from Penn State in 2003, specializing in labor relations and workplace safety in heavy industry. Her dissertation, Hidden Casualties, Unreported Industrial Accidents in American Steel Production, 1945-1995, revealed systematic patterns of safety record manipulation across multiple steel companies. The work established her reputation as a meticulous researcher willing to challenge official narratives. The Industrial Heritage Foundation hired Catherine in 2018 to lead their comprehensive artifact preservation project at Bethlehem Steel. The $2.30 million grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities aimed to create a definitive digital archive of American steel production. Catherine's task was to catalog every significant piece of equipment, every document, every remnant of the industrial process that had defined American manufacturing for over a century. However, tensions had emerged between Catherine and the Steel Stacks Heritage Foundation Board. According to board meeting minutes obtained by investigators, Catherine had repeatedly clashed with foundation leadership over which aspects of steel production history deserved preservation. Board Chairman Robert Morrison favored exhibits that celebrated technological achievement and economic prosperity. Catherine pushed for more comprehensive documentation, including worker safety records and environmental impact studies. There were heated discussions, admitted board member Patricia Kellerman in her statement to police. Dr. Kowalczyk felt we were sanitizing history, presenting only the positive aspects of steel production. She wanted to include documentation of workplace injuries, environmental contamination, labor disputes. We worried about the impact on tourism and community pride. The conflict intensified during summer 2019, when Catherine discovered significant discrepancies between official Bethlehem Steel Company records and union archives, maintained by local steelworker families. Company safety logs showed remarkably few serious accidents during peak production periods in the 1970s and early 1980s. But union records, kept informally by shop stewards and safety representatives, documented dozens of incidents that never appeared in official reports. She was like a detective, Frank Novak would later tell investigators. Frank's father, Joseph Novak, had operated cranes at Bethlehem Steel for 32 years. My dad kept his own records too. When someone got hurt bad, when there was an accident the company tried to keep quiet, the union guys would write it down. They didn't trust management to tell the truth about safety. Catherine had been systematically comparing these unofficial records with company documents, identifying patterns of suppressed accident reports. Her research notes, found in her office after her disappearance, contained references to systematic underreporting and potential criminal negligence. She had compiled evidence of at least 17 serious accidents between 1978 and 1982 that appeared in union records but were absent from official company safety logs. The implications were significant. If Catherine could prove systematic safety record manipulation, it might expose Bethlehem Steel Corporation to renewed liability claims from injured workers or their families. More importantly for the heritage site, it would complicate the foundation's efforts to present steel production as a source of community pride and economic achievement. Margaret Fleming, real estate development consultant for the Heritage Site's expansion project, had expressed concerns about Catherine's research direction. In an email dated September 15, 2019, Fleming wrote to Board Chairman Morrison, Dr. Kowalczyk's focus on industrial accidents and safety violations could seriously impact our development timeline. Potential investors are already concerned about environmental liability. Adding workplace safety controversies will make expansion financing extremely difficult. Catherine's final research proposal, submitted to the Foundation Board on October 1st, requested access to previously restricted areas of the steel complex. She wanted to examine blast furnace maintenance records stored in the plant's old administrative offices. The proposal specifically mentioned her intent to photograph and catalog worker safety documentation and incident reports currently housed in off-limits sections of the complex. But the board denied her request on October 8th, 6 days before her disappearance. The official reason cited safety concerns and insurance liability. But board members privately worried that Catherine's research was moving beyond historical preservation toward potentially damaging investigations of corporate misconduct. As investigators pieced together Catherine's final weeks, a picture emerged of a dedicated historian caught between competing visions of how industrial history should be remembered. Her commitment to comprehensive truth-telling had placed her at odds with powerful interests focused on economic development and community image. The question remained, had that conflict somehow led to her disappearance? Frank Novak understood the weight of inherited memory. At 58, he carried stories passed down from his father Joseph, who had operated overhead cranes at Bethlehem Steel for 32 years. Now Frank worked security for the very site where his father had once helped forge America's industrial backbone. The irony wasn't lost on him, protecting a heritage site built on ground where his family's actual heritage had been systematically forgotten. "My father never talked much about the good times," Frank told investigators during his interview on October 16. "He talked about the guys who got hurt, the accidents that never made the newspapers. He said the company treated steelworkers like the steel itself, something you could bend and shape, and if it broke, you just got more." Joseph Novak had been more than a crane operator. As a shop steward for United Steelworkers Local 1599, he kept meticulous unofficial records of workplace incidents. When someone was injured on his shift, when safety equipment failed, when supervisors pressured workers to ignore safety protocols for production quotas, Joseph wrote it down. He stored these handwritten logs in a metal toolbox in his basement, alongside accident report carbon copies that workers weren't supposed to keep. "Dad said the union couldn't trust company records," Frank explained. Management would classify serious injuries as minor incidents or blame workers for accidents caused by faulty equipment. So the union kept their own books. They called it insurance. Insurance against the company rewriting history. Dr. Catherine Kowalczyk had discovered Joseph's records through Frank in August 2019. Frank initially hesitated to share his father's documentation, knowing it contained potentially damaging information about Bethlehem Steel's safety practices. But Catherine's approach impressed him. She wasn't looking to sensationalize industrial accidents or damage the community's pride in its steel-making heritage. She wanted to honor the complete truth of steelworker experience. "She understood what my father went through," Frank recalled. "She said steelworkers deserve to have their real stories told, not just the company version where everyone was happy and safe. She said the dangerous work they did made their contributions even more heroic, not less." Over 3 months, Catherine spent dozens of hours in Frank's basement, photographing union documents and cross-referencing them with official company records. What she found revealed systematic discrepancy. Between 1978 and 1982, Joseph's unofficial logs documented 43 serious workplace accidents in his crane operations sector alone. Company safety reports for the same period listed only 12 incidents, none classified as serious injuries. The most troubling case involved the death of crane operator Michael Petrucci on March 17, 1981. According to Joseph's handwritten notes, Petrucci fell 40 feet when a safety cable snapped during routine maintenance. The company classified his death as operator error, due to failure to follow safety protocols. But Joseph's log contained a detailed account from a witness who saw the cable snap due to a frayed section that had been reported for replacement weeks earlier. "My father wrote that Mike's widow got almost nothing from the company," Frank said. "They blamed Mike for his own death, said he violated safety procedures. But the truth was, they'd been putting off cable maintenance to save money. The union tried to fight it, but Mike was dead and couldn't defend himself." Catherine's research had uncovered similar patterns throughout the steel complex. Production pressure led to deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance led to accidents. Accidents were then attributed to worker error, to avoid liability claims and regulatory scrutiny. The result was systematic minimization of Bethlehem Steel's responsibility for workplace safety. But Frank's concerns extended beyond historical injustice. As the heritage site expanded, he watched authentic steelworker history being packaged for tourist consumption. The new museum exhibits celebrated technological achievement and industrial prowess. They featured interactive displays about steel production processes and economic impact. Missing was any serious discussion of the human cost. The injuries, the deaths, the families devastated by industrial accidents. "They want to turn this place into Disneyland," Frank said during his interview. "Pretty lights on the blast furnaces, casino entertainment, upscale restaurants. But they don't want visitors thinking about the blood that's mixed into this ground. They don't want anyone asking uncomfortable questions about how many workers died to make America's steel." The gentrification troubled many longtime Bethlehem residents, whose families had worked the steel mills. Rising property values displaced longtime residents. New businesses catered to tourists and casino patrons rather than the working-class community that had sustained the area for generations. The heritage site's sanitized version of industrial history seemed to erase the actual heritage of steelworker families. Frank believed Catherine had been working to preserve authentic steelworker memory against these commercial pressures. Her meticulous documentation of union records represented more than academic research. It was resistance against historical erasure. She was ensuring that future generations would know the complete truth about American steel production, including its human costs. In their final conversation on October 10th, Catherine had told Frank she was close to a breakthrough in her research. She'd identified patterns in the suppressed accident records that suggested coordinated cover-ups involving multiple levels of Bethlehem Steel management. She planned to present her findings to the Smithsonian curators as essential context for their upcoming steel production exhibition. She was excited, Frank remembered. She said she'd found something that would change how people understood the steel industry's history. She said the workers' real stories would finally be told. Eddie. 4 days later, Catherine Kowalczyk vanished inside the steel cathedral where those stories were buried. Margaret Fleming arrived at the Steel Stacks Heritage Foundation Board meeting on October 2, 2019, with architectural renderings and financial projections that would reshape the former steel mill into a premier entertainment destination. As senior development consultant for Riverside Casino Holdings, Fleming represented investors who had already committed $85 million to expand gaming operations at the heritage site. But her ambitious vision required removing what she called problematic historical artifacts, structures, and documentation that complicated the site's transformation from industrial graveyard to profitable tourist attraction. "The market research is clear," Fleming told the foundation board that morning, according to meeting minutes obtained by investigators. "Visitors want inspiration, not depression. They want to celebrate American industrial achievement, not dwell on workplace accidents or labor disputes. Dr. Kowalczyk's research direction threatens to undermine everything we're trying to build here." Fleming's development plan called for demolishing several blast furnace support structures to create space for a luxury hotel and conference center. The structures contained maintenance offices where decades of safety records were stored in filing cabinets and storage rooms. Fleming argued that these records had no tourism value and posed potential environmental and legal liabilities for the heritage site's expansion. The financial stakes were enormous. Riverside Casino Holdings projected that expanded gaming operations, combined with heritage tourism and conference facilities, could generate over $200 million annually in revenue. The development would create 1,500 permanent jobs and transform Bethlehem into a major East Coast entertainment destination. Local politicians strongly supported the project, seeing it as economic salvation for a region still recovering from steel industry collapse. However, Catherine Kowalczyk's research threatened to complicate everything. Her documentation of suppressed workplace accidents could attract renewed attention from labor rights organizations, environmental groups, and plaintiffs' attorneys. Even worse, her findings might support new liability claims against Bethlehem Steel's successor companies, potentially creating legal obstacles for development financing. "Insurance companies are already nervous about environmental contamination at the site," explained Foundation Board member Thomas Chen in his statement to investigators. Adding workplace safety controversies would make liability coverage extremely expensive. Margaret made it clear that investor confidence depended on limiting historical complications. Fleming had specific concerns about Catherine's recent requests for access to restricted areas of the steel complex. The abandoned administrative offices contained not only safety records, but also environmental monitoring data, labor relations files, and correspondence between management and government regulators. Catherine's systematic cataloging of these documents could expose information that development interests preferred to keep buried. In a confidential email dated September 23, Fleming wrote to board chairman Robert Morrison, Kowalczyk's preservation methodology is creating significant risks for our development timeline. We need to consider whether her research contract should be modified to focus on less sensitive historical materials. The Smithsonian exhibition can celebrate steel production achievements without highlighting every workplace accident from 50 years ago. The board faced a difficult balance. Federal grants required comprehensive historical documentation, including workplace safety records. The National Endowment for the Humanities expected rigorous academic standards from Catherine's preservation project. But private investors demanded assurance that historical research wouldn't create legal or public relations problems for commercial development. Fleming proposed a compromise. Catherine could continue her research, but with restricted access to sensitive documents. Safety records from the 1978 to 1982 period, the years showing the most significant discrepancies between official and unofficial accident reports, would be excluded from public archives until legal review confirmed they posed no liability risks. It was about protecting the community's economic future, Morrison explained to investigators. We couldn't let historical research, however well-intentioned, jeopardize thousands of jobs and millions in development investment. Sometimes you have to make difficult choices about which aspects of history deserve preservation. But Catherine had strongly resisted these restrictions. In her formal response to the board, dated September 30th, she argued that selective preservation violated both academic integrity and her professional obligations to federal grant sponsors. She pointed out that the National Endowment for the Humanities explicitly required comprehensive documentation of industrial heritage, including difficult or controversial aspects of historical experience. Wow. Catherine's position created a standoff. Federal grants provided the legal authority for her research access. Private investors provided the political pressure to limit that access. The Heritage Foundation Board found itself caught between competing obligations to academic integrity and economic development. The conflict intensified when Catherine submitted her October 1st proposal, requesting access to blast furnace administrative offices scheduled for demolition. Fleming viewed this as direct defiance of the board's guidance toward less sensitive historical materials. Morrison worried that Catherine was deliberately seeking out the most problematic documents in the complex. In a heated phone conversation on October 7th, recorded in Morrison's calendar notes, Fleming told him, "Dr. Kowalczyk is either naive about the economic realities we're facing, or she's deliberately trying to sabotage development efforts. Either way, we can't afford to have her digging through 50-year-old accident reports when we're trying to attract major investors." The board denied Catherine's access request on October 8th, but their explanation satisfied neither federal grant requirements nor Catherine's research standards. Fleming privately lobbied for terminating Catherine's contract entirely, arguing that her research had moved beyond historical preservation toward what Fleming called investigative journalism with potentially damaging economic consequences. Meeting notes from October 9th show Fleming presenting the board with a stark choice: modify Catherine's research scope to exclude sensitive safety records or risk losing private investment that would fund the heritage site's transformation. Without private funding, the site would remain a collection of rusting industrial ruins, rather than becoming a vibrant economic engine for the region. Catherine's disappearance occurred just 6 days after the board denied her access request and 5 days after Fleming's ultimatum about research modifications. Investigators noted the timing but found no direct evidence connecting development pressures to Catherine's vanishing. The question lingered. In the struggle between historical truth and economic development, how far would interested parties go to protect their vision of the future? The security footage from October 13, 2019, tells a story that raises more questions than it answers. At exactly 11:47 p.m., Dr. Catherine Kowalczyk's Honda Civic pulls into the employee parking area of the Steel Stacks Heritage District. The timestamp glows white against the grainy black and white image as she steps out, carrying her standard equipment: a digital tablet, measuring tape, industrial flashlight, and the clipboard that would later be found beside Blast Furnace C. Security guard Jake Morrison reviewed the footage dozens of times in the days following her disappearance. She looked completely normal, he told investigators. Walked with purpose, like she always did. Nothing seemed off. The cameras tracked her movement across the heritage site's main plaza, past the converted administration building that now houses the visitor center, toward the towering silhouette of the blast furnace complex. Dr. Kowalczyk had proper authorization for the overnight inventory work. The Steel Stacks Heritage Foundation had granted her 24-hour access to complete a comprehensive catalog of artifacts and structural elements scheduled for potential relocation. What the Foundation didn't anticipate was what she would actually find during those dark hours. The clipboard recovered the next morning contained 17 entries in her precise handwriting. Each item was cataloged with meticulous detail: location coordinates within the blast furnace, physical dimensions, material composition, and most puzzling of all, serial numbers and manufacturing dates. The problem became apparent when heritage site managers cross-referenced her inventory against official company records. None of the items Dr. Kowalczyk had cataloged appeared in any Bethlehem Steel documentation. The serial numbers she recorded predated the company's known numbering systems by decades. Manufacturing dates reached back to the 1890s, well before the blast furnace complex was built. According to every official record, the artifacts she had inventoried simply didn't exist. "It's like she was cataloging ghost equipment," said Margaret Fleming, the Heritage Foundation's development consultant. "We've been through those spaces hundreds of times for safety inspections and tourism planning. There's nothing there that matches her descriptions." But Dr. Kowalczyk's voice recorder, found clipped to her jacket pocket near the clipboard, told a different story. The device contained 43 minutes of audio from that final night. The recording begins at 12:14 a.m., with the sound of her footsteps echoing through the cathedral-like interior of blast furnace. The audio quality is poor, distorted by the massive steel structures and concrete acoustics. But her voice comes through clearly as she describes what she's seeing. Item designation BFC-17. Cast iron water cooling pipe, approximately 4 inches in diameter. Serial number, this can't be right. Serial reads BS 1892-47. That predates the furnace construction by 15 years. Well, Mayor, 26 minutes into the recording, something changes. The echo pattern of her footsteps shifts, suggesting she had moved into a different area of the complex. Industrial sounds begin bleeding through the audio: the distant hum of machinery, the rhythmic clanking of conveyor systems, the hiss of steam under pressure. These sounds should have been impossible. The blast furnace had been cold and silent for nearly 3 decades. "Do you hear that?" Dr. Kowalczyk's voice on the recording grows tense. "There's something running down here. Some kind of equipment still operating." Her footsteps quicken, moving deeper into the complex. The industrial sounds grow louder, more distinct. At 38 minutes and 14 seconds, she makes her final log entry. They're all here. Maintenance logs, accident reports, worker assignments, everything from 1978 through 1982. They've been stored in a sealed archive room I've never seen on any building plans. The recording continues for another 4 minutes and 31 seconds, but Dr. Kowalczyk doesn't speak again. The audio captures the sound of papers rustling, her breathing, and the persistent mechanical humming in the background. Then, at 42:58, the recording cuts to silence. Security cameras showed no one entering or leaving the heritage site after Dr. Kowalczyk's arrival. The perimeter remained sealed, all access points monitored. Yet by dawn, she had vanished, leaving behind only evidence of discoveries that, according to every official record, should have been impossible to make. The missing shift records she mentioned in her final log entry were particularly troubling to investigators. Frank Novak confirmed that Union archives from that specific period, 1978 to 1982, had been missing from both company and union files for decades. "Those were the years nobody talks about," he explained. "Bad accidents, safety violations, workers who got hurt and never came back. The paperwork just disappeared." Investigators attempted to locate the archive room Dr. Kowalczyk described, but building plans and structural surveys showed no such space within the blast furnace complex. The areas she claimed to have accessed either didn't exist according to official blueprints, or were sealed off during the heritage site's safety modifications. Perhaps most puzzling was the timeline discrepancy revealed by additional security footage. Cameras at the heritage site's main entrance recorded Dr. Kowalczyk's Honda Civic leaving the parking area at 3:27 am, nearly 3 hours after her voice recorder stopped working. The footage quality was too poor to determine who was driving the vehicle. The car was found 2 days later in a long-term parking garage at Lehigh Valley International Airport, 43 miles from the heritage site. The parking ticket timestamp showed arrival at 4:15 a.m. Dr. Kowalczyk's purse, containing her wallet and identification, was found in the car's glove compartment. Airport security footage showed no one matching her description in the terminal during a relevant time frame. As dawn broke on October 14th, the blast furnace complex stood as it always had, silent, massive, and keeping its secrets. But somewhere in that steel cathedral, Dr. Catherine Kowalczyk had found something that wasn't supposed to exist. The question investigators now faced was whether those discoveries had led to her disappearance, or if her disappearance was the price for making them. The interior of Blast Furnace C defied easy description. Search teams entering the structure on October 15th found themselves in a vertical maze of steel walkways, concrete platforms, and massive processing equipment that rose 12 stories into shadow. Industrial archaeologist Dr. Michael Torres, brought in as a consultant, described the space as a cathedral built for fire and iron instead of prayer. The search operation required specialized equipment. Northampton County Sheriff's Department coordinated with industrial rescue teams familiar with confined space operations. Each searcher wore climbing harnesses and carried radio beacons, essential safety measures in a structure where you could easily become lost 20 feet from the entrance. The acoustics were incredible, recalled Deputy Lisa Martinez, who participated in the first systematic sweep. You'd call out, and your voice would echo for what seemed like minutes, bouncing off all that steel and concrete. Sometimes the echoes would come back sounding like voices responding, but when you followed them, you'd find empty platforms. The blast furnace interior revealed layers of industrial history that complicated the search. Original 1940s construction was overlaid with 1960s modernization efforts, then modified again in 1980s with safety improvements and environmental controls. The result was a three-dimensional puzzle of interconnected levels, dead-end passages, and equipment alcoves that created countless places where someone could become trapped or hidden. On the second day of searching, teams began discovering the memorial plaques that Dr. Kowalczyk had been photographing. These small metal markers, roughly the size of license plates, were welded to structural beams throughout the complex. Each bore a worker's name, dates of employment, and often cryptic notations like "lost to the heat" or "took the long walk home." The plaques weren't part of any official memorial program. Heritage site managers had never seen them before, despite conducting regular safety inspections. "We knew about the formal memorial garden outside," said site supervisor David Chang, "but these hidden markers inside the furnace? They were news to us." Frank Novak recognized many of the names on the plaques, steel workers who had died during his father's era, men whose deaths had been classified as heart attacks or home accidents rather than workplace fatalities. "My dad talked about some of these guys," he told investigators. "Said they disappeared from the job and the company line was they'd quit or moved away. Turns out they'd been memorialized right here in the steel, hidden where only other workers would see them." Dr. Kowalczyk's digital camera, found on a platform near the furnace's charging floor, contained 247 photographs taken during her final night. The images documented not just the memorial plaques, but also evidence of ongoing maintenance in areas supposedly abandoned. Tool marks on steel beams were fresh, not decades old. Electrical connections showed signs of recent use. Most puzzling, several photographs showed equipment that appeared operational, gauges with active readings, control panels with illuminated indicators. "She was systematically documenting everything," observed Detective Ray Kowalski from the Bethlehem Police Department. "The photos show she had a plan, methodically working through different levels of the furnace complex. But the sequence stops abruptly on the 8th level, right near what used to be the gas cleaning system. The 8th level presented unique challenges for search teams. The original walkways had been partially removed during decommissioning, leaving gaps that required ropes and technical climbing skills to navigate. It was here, on a platform accessible only by ladder, that teams found Dr. Kowalczyk's research notes, scattered by air currents from the ventilation system still operating in the complex. Her handwritten observations revealed a pattern that went beyond individual memorial plaques. She had been mapping the locations of worker deaths throughout the blast furnace, cross-referencing them with production records and accident reports. The notes suggested she had identified specific areas where fatal incidents occurred repeatedly, always during the overnight shifts when supervisory presence was minimal. One page, partially torn and stained with rust flakes, contained a timeline that made investigators pause. 1978, 1982. Peak production period. Official accident rate drops to company-wide low. Unofficial worker disappearances increased 340%. Discrepancy suggests systematic underreporting of fatalities to maintain federal contracts. Yet, the implications were staggering. If Dr. Kowalczyk's research was accurate, Bethlehem Steel had concealed dozens of worker deaths during a critical period when the company was competing for major government infrastructure contracts. The cover-up would have involved falsifying safety records, bribing inspectors, and disposing of evidence, including the bodies of workers killed in industrial accidents. As search teams worked deeper into the blast furnace complex, they discovered that the structure was far more extensive than building plans suggested. Hidden passages connected different levels, emergency exits led to areas not shown on heritage site maps, and some sections appeared to have been sealed and then reopened multiple times over the decades. "It's like the building has been keeping secrets for 30 years, observed Dr. Torres. "Someone has been maintaining access to areas officially closed to the public. The question is who and why." The search for Dr. Catherine Kowalczyk continued for 6 days, covering every accessible area of the blast furnace complex and the surrounding heritage site. Industrial climbing experts rappelled down the interior of the furnace itself, searching the charging area where molten iron had once flowed. Sonar equipment scanned water-filled basements and drainage systems. Ground-penetrating radar examined areas where concrete floors might conceal hidden spaces. Despite the massive effort, covering an area larger than most city blocks and reaching heights equivalent to a 12-story building, no trace of Dr. Kowalczyk was found beyond her equipment and notes. The industrial cathedral had claimed another soul, adding her to the mysteries that seemed woven into its very steel framework. What remained were her discoveries, evidence of hidden memorials, covered-up deaths, and ongoing secrets within a structure that was supposed to be nothing more than a preserved monument to American industrial history. The blast furnace complex stood silent once again, its steel beams holding fast to whatever truth Dr. Catherine Kowalczyk had uncovered in those final hours before she vanished. 3 months after Dr. Catherine Kowalczyk's disappearance, the people closest to the case remained divided about what had happened in the depths of Blast Furnace C. Each theory reflected not just different interpretations of evidence, but different views about power, truth, and the price of uncovering buried secrets. Frank Novak's theory was the darkest and most direct. "Catherine found proof that the company killed workers and covered it up," he stated during a January 2020 interview with investigators. "Someone didn't want that information getting out, especially with all of the development money flowing into the heritage site. She was silenced, and her research was cleaned out to protect million-dollar business interests." Novak pointed to several troubling facts that supported his suspicions. Dr. Kowalczyk's office at Lehigh University had been entered sometime between October 14th and 17th, 2019. University security had no record of authorized access, yet file cabinets containing her Bethlehem Steel research were found empty. The break-in was so professionally executed that nothing else was disturbed. Not her computer, not valuable equipment, not even her coffee mug left on the desk. "They took exactly what they needed to take," Novak continued. 40 years of union records, accident reports, worker testimonies, all gone. But they left behind everything that would make it look like a robbery. This wasn't random. This was surgical. The missing records from 1978 to 1982 formed the centerpiece of Novak's theory. These were the years when Bethlehem Steel secured contracts for major federal infrastructure projects, including bridge construction and naval shipbuilding programs. Maintaining a clean safety record was essential for winning government contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. If word got out that the company was hiding worker deaths, those contracts would disappear overnight, Novak explained. "We're talking about enough money to destroy careers, tank stock prices, maybe even trigger criminal prosecutions. People have killed for a lot less than that." Margaret Fleming, the Heritage Foundation's development consultant, offered a more conventional explanation. Dr. Kowalczyk was working alone at night in a structure that wasn't designed for solo exploration, she pointed out. Industrial accidents happen, even to careful people. The blast furnace complex has hazards we're still discovering. Fleming's theory focused on the physical dangers within the decommissioned facility. Despite safety modifications made during the heritage conversion, the blast furnace retained numerous hazards: unstable platforms, chemical residues, confined spaces with poor ventilation, and structural elements weakened by decades of extreme heat and corrosion. She could have fallen through a corroded floor section, been overcome by chemical vapors, or become trapped in an area where her calls for help couldn't be heard, Fleming suggested. The fact that we haven't found her body doesn't mean she was murdered. It could mean she fell into a part of the structure we don't know how to access, or that hasn't been searched properly. Fleming also noted that Dr. Kowalczyk had been working under significant professional pressure. Her recent clashes with the Heritage Foundation over preservation priorities had created tension. Her academic reputation depended on producing significant research findings about industrial history. She may have taken risks she wouldn't normally take, Fleming observed. Pushed into dangerous areas because she felt the pressure to make discoveries that would justify her access and funding. The investigation revealed additional complications that muddied both theories. Security footage analysis showed that Dr. Kowalczyk's car had left the heritage site parking area at 3:27 a.m. on October 14th, nearly 3 hours after her voice recorder stopped working. But the footage quality was too poor to determine who was driving the vehicle. The car was found 2 days later in a long-term parking garage at Lehigh Valley International Airport, 43 miles from the heritage site. The parking ticket timestamp showed arrival at 4:15 a.m. Dr. Kowalczyk's purse, containing her wallet and identification, was found in the car's glove compartment. Airport security footage showed no one matching her description in the terminal during the relevant time frame. Either she left voluntarily and went to great lengths to hide her destination, noted Detective Kowalski, or someone moved her car to make it look like she left voluntarily. Both scenarios raise serious questions. The timeline discrepancy troubled investigators. If Dr. Kowalczyk had left the heritage site alive at 3:27 a.m., why had her voice recorder stopped working nearly an hour earlier? If someone else had moved her car, what had happened to her in the missing hours between midnight and 3 a.m.? Perhaps most troubling was the systematic removal of evidence from multiple locations. Beyond her emptied office, the heritage site's administrative files showed signs of recent document removal. Maintenance logs, building plans, and safety inspection reports from the 1980s through 2000s had been pulled from filing systems with no official authorization. Someone cleaned house, observed FBI Special Agent Maria Santos, who joined the investigation in December 2019. The question is whether they were covering up Dr. Kowalczyk's disappearance or covering up the secrets she had discovered. Those might be two different crimes with two different perpetrators. The federal investigation expanded the scope beyond local authorities, examining whether Dr. Kowalczyk's research had uncovered evidence of criminal violations that occurred during active steel production. If Bethlehem Steel had systematically concealed workplace fatalities to secure federal contracts, multiple federal crimes would have been committed, with no statute of limitations on potential prosecutions. Today, the blast furnace complex stands as it did before Dr. Kowalczyk's disappearance, a monument to American industrial achievement and a tourist destination for families learning about steelmaking history. Guided tours still operate daily, leading visitors through carefully selected areas of the heritage site while avoiding the more dangerous or controversial sections. But among the steelworker families of Bethlehem, questions persist about what history is being preserved and what history is being buried. The memorial plaques Dr. Kowalczyk discovered have been quietly removed by heritage site management, officially for safety reasons during ongoing structural assessments. Frank Novak continues working security at the heritage site, walking daily past the blast furnace where his friend vanished. Catherine was trying to tell the truth about what happened to people like my father, he reflects. Whether that truth got her killed or just got her scared enough to run away, I guess we may never know. But the truth is still down there, waiting for someone else brave enough to go looking for it.
If this case stays with you, you're not alone. Here at Unresolved America, we cover cases like this every single day. Stories that deserve to be remembered, questions that refuse to fade. If you want to keep these investigations alive, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. Drop a like if this story moved you, and leave a comment telling us which detail haunts you most. Until tomorrow, stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop asking questions.